In Russia's Kaluga region, an industrial facility caught fire as a result of an attack. In Volgograd, an oil refinery was hit, and a drone also crashed into a high-rise building. Last night in Smolensk, the polymix plant was attacked. Zelensky's successor of the auto-aggregate plant, and it has a powerful production base for the enemy's armed forces, including mechanical assembly, preparatory, thermal, tooling, and foundry production. The Ministry of Defense has already reported the successful destruction of drones. More than 100 Beavers, by which we mean Ukrainian drones, attacked Russia last night. Friends, there was a strike in Grozny. Could the military unit in Kankala or the Gudermes regiment of Russia in Grozny have been attacked? We will discuss all of this with the President of the Assembly of the Peoples of the Caucasus, Ruslan Kamdeyevich Kutayev, right now. Friends, please like this video and subscribe to my YouTube channel. In the comments, write where you're watching from and leave a few kind words in support of Ukraine. Let's get started.
Ukraine has a complete advantage specifically in drone weaponry. I would like to refer to Russian military correspondents, and specifically regarding drones in Pokrovsk. They give examples and complain about it. And they say that 90% of the drones in the sky in the Pokrovsk direction, the ones they tried to break through with, the ones they wanted to break through Ukraine's defenses, well, they themselves are witnesses to this. 90% of the drones in the sky are Ukrainian. And this is a vivid indicator that Ukraine, the armed forces of Ukraine, have taken control of the situation in terms of warfare, combat, reconnaissance, defense, protection, and offense. Drones and drone warfare. Ukraine has moved ahead in this area, and it is showing very significant results. As for the ongoing raids on Russian territory itself, this is primarily about effectively destroying crucial logistics, completely dismantling vital infrastructure, and thoroughly eliminating everything else that is absolutely essential for successfully waging this protracted war. And above all, this means the oil industry, refueling planes, tanks, and vehicles. Well, and refueling donkeys too. Though donkeys don't need refueling on the front lines, they probably find their own feed in the Ukrainian steppes. But in all other respects, it's clear. These are no longer just assumptions, so to speak. It's now obvious that Ukraine has halted its advance. This is definitely in the Pokrovsk direction. This indicates that this is what really matters overall, so that our viewers understand drones in modern warfare, as we all see, play a very important role, if not the most decisive one. And here Ukraine has excelled, and Ukraine has achieved significant success.
What's happening a bit in the Caucasus? Because there's constant talk about the situation in Grozny. What is this connected to? Are Ukrainian drones really attacking the region? Or is this not just about Ukrainian drones, but perhaps also a greeting from the Kremlin? What do you think?
I truly think that even if Ukrainian drones are indeed reaching there, from the very beginning, when we initially discussed this particular and significant matter, I consistently insisted on this crucial point, and only much later did other prominent experts and analysts pick it up and acknowledge its importance. There can, in my considered opinion, only be two primary targets here that would genuinely be of significant interest to Ukrainian drones, given the current geopolitical circumstances and strategic objectives. First and foremost, that's the military base in Grozny, near Grozny Kankala. Everything important to the federal center is concentrated there. The families of these federal military personnel, including those who are officially represented by the Ministry of Defense, as well as the families of Russian FSB members and various other related individuals, all reside in that particular location. In other words, the most important, the main thing that Moscow represents in this region is under protection directly in Kankala. And there's also in Gudermes this training center and some other Russian facilities. These two particular sites could, let's say, potentially be significant targets for Ukraine to launch an attack. Everything else that's happening is, as they say, from the devil, and in this case, the devil is the FSB. Here, brother, that's exactly what I'm saying, and I insist on it. And then FSB drones fly in from Mozdok, and they're stirring things up. This is already a showdown between the FSB and Kadyrov's circle. There are some tensions between them. They understand what's going on. All we can do is record these arrivals and document the crimes being committed. In the vast majority of cases, in Grozny, when the FSB does this, they cause damage and harm to the general population because those approximately 10 to 15 dedicated police officers live in some particular building, and right next to it are the actual homes of ordinary, everyday civilians. And that's why I think anyone who understands knows what's really going on there. And here, Dasha, you made the right point and emphasized it correctly. There may be Ukrainian drones, but you should expect them in Kankala and Gudermes. Everything else, it seems, are Russian drones, specifically FSB drones originating from Russia, actively attacking Kadyrov and his various power structures and associated entities.
Kamdivich, there is information that more than 150 Ukrainian soldiers may be held captive in Chechnya. More than 150 Ukrainian soldiers may be detained as prisoners on the territory of Chechnya. There is a high probability that they are in Grozny. Radio Liberty, citing the coordination headquarters for the treatment of prisoners of war. Verbatim, the coordination headquarters. Prisoners of war may be transferred to detention facilities on the territory of Chechnya, where, as in other places of captivity, the norms of humanitarian law and the Geneva Convention are violated. The Kadyrov regime uses them as a human shield for military facilities and as leverage to lift sanctions from his family. What do you say? End of quote.
Nonsense, just nonsense, because Kadyrov has a huge family and there simply aren't enough prisoners of war for them to keep at these facilities. This is just when people make things up out of thin air and say some nonsense. In this regard, Kadyrov is no better than any other Russian general or Russian official. They are all criminals. They are all criminals who, without a doubt, should face a military tribunal and prosecution. Well, when you have 150 people, the Chechen Republic is the most militarized zone in the North Caucasus. There are a huge number of different facilities. What does Radio Liberty say? At which facility are they holding 150 people? They just create some news hooks so that people come to them and watch. This does not correspond to reality. Out of curiosity, I refer Radio Liberty to this. Take a look. Ukrainian prisoners of war who are held in various situations, who are shown, and Russian facilities where prisoners of war are kept. There in Russian captivity, look at them. They're thin and emaciated, wearing some shabby clothes, while over there, it's as if they've come to a training camp or some sports tournament. There are plenty of tracksuits, they're alive, healthy, and so on. For some reason, Radio Liberty persistently keeps pushing some kind of pro-Russian line. A pro-Russian, pro-Rus line in their informational behavior. This really doesn't correspond to reality. When the Trump-Putin talks took place, we saw the jubilation of the Russians, Russian propagandists, as very accurately, in my opinion, Bolton put it. They were drinking vodka straight from the bottle, celebrating the occasion. And on the second day, I want to remind you, Vice President Vance, he's one of Trump's circle, one of the biggest Ukraine haters, who openly expresses his bile, his rejection of Ukraine. And when he, along with the Secretary of Defense, was already correcting Trump, and Vance said that he does not rule out the possibility that even the American army might appear in Ukraine, on the side of Ukraine. What does this tell us? Even such an extremely unfriendly person toward Ukraine, if he is correcting Trump, it means that both the Secretary of Defense and the Vice President are correcting Trump. They are adjusting the position Trump expressed. They are making amendments. I just sat and listened to Pistorius' speech, the Minister of Defense, in its entirety. Honestly, I was sitting in Germany, quite literally clapping my hands in front of my computer monitor as I watched all of this unfold. He truly gave a rather cold shower and emphatically stated that the continent of Europe does not need any unsolicited remarks or moralizing lectures from the United States of America. Europe consists of democratic countries where, in fact, democracy is observed even more than in the USA. Democracy is upheld, and that's why Europe took it very seriously. I like the way Europe is behaving. I like the way the president of Ukraine is behaving as well, who, firstly, when the US Secretary of the Treasury flew in with her document and basically demanded that he sign the agreement on these rare earth minerals, he refused to sign. And here is the second very important statement from Zelensky, that no agreements will be signed at the Munich venue. Ukraine, I warned from the very beginning, even though I had various opponents who disagreed with me. I said, you simply don't understand who the Ukrainian people are and what the Ukrainian authorities are really like. I genuinely find them likable today. Ukraine has never, under any circumstances, agreed to bow down, to lower their heads before the Russians. Today they have stopped them. Today they are fighting successfully against them. And never in the history of Ukraine, of Ukrainians, have they ever voluntarily, without a fight, without struggle, without war, submitted to the Russians or to Russia. And that's why I think the situation is escalating. And in this escalation, I see more positives than negatives. First of all, both Ukraine and Europe have shown the United States of America that any discussions about Ukraine without Ukraine are impossible. And that cannot happen. This is very important. And already, I don't know why General Telek went from being the president's representative to not being a representative anymore. That's for the Americans themselves to ultimately judge, but Kellogg also clearly stated that any potential negotiations must absolutely include Ukraine, even though he added that Europe would not actively participate in them, although Europeans, just like their American counterparts, are indeed steadfast allies of Ukraine. So not everything is clear-cut and not everything is bad for Ukraine. Ukraine continues to fight. We started this program by talking about how many drone strikes Ukraine has carried out, not only on the front lines at the line of contact, but also deep in the rear, inside Russia itself. How much tension Ukraine is causing for both military and civilian targets within Russia itself. So who said that Ukraine has stopped the war, stopped fighting, stopped resisting? In Europe is coming together now. That's great. Europe understands, realizes that it needs to start forming its own line of conduct without always looking back at America, an autonomous, independent one. There's no need to make anything up about Europe here right now. There is a common European army. It's the army of Ukraine. What they need to do now is simply unite economically into a single fist and without looking back at America, ensure their own security above all. Because if Russia successfully gets through the formidable lines of defense, all these crucial Ukrainian lines of defense, it will inevitably come straight to the heart of Europe. I truly believe this profound understanding is worth a great deal indeed. There is understanding, there is contact. And I think that all of this, in the end, will serve as a very good example for the behavior of the Americans and the American president in the future.
Every voice matters. Join our community, support independent journalism and help us bring you the truth from Ukraine. Become a member of Ukraine Today. Join us now.
2021, Deputy Foreign Minister Ryabkov explicitly stated, he quite literally said, you should pack up all your belongings and get NATO completely out, even from the entirety of Eastern Europe, immediately. In other words, they drew the precise line of their current behavior and the clear line of their unwavering demands. And in this particular way, it is abundantly clear that Vladimir Putin is absolutely not going to stop at just merely wanting Ukraine to become exclusively, if not completely and entirely occupied and fully subjugated. Then Ukraine must, without any doubt, be fully subordinate to Russia, directly governed by Russia, and completely controlled by Moscow. I also want to remind you of an article from 2021 that was published at the very least under Putin's authorship, where he said that Ukraine is anti-Russia. That is, in fact, a completely frank admission that two state entities like Ukraine and Russia cannot coexist. They openly say that the very existence of Ukraine is essentially a threat to Russia, and they want to destroy this international entity of an independent state. That's it. These are precisely the kinds of appetites, these are the specific kinds of demands, and these are the fundamental kinds of requirements that Russia invariably brings to the negotiating table. But even the not very well informed, indeed the not very politically literate US Secretary of Defense, in his carefully prepared cheat sheet that was specifically written for him, said that the absolute sovereignty of the Ukrainian state, its complete independence, at least on the territory, the significant part of which has not been formally ceded to Russia. He assumes that Ukraine will have to cede some small part, But on the rest of the territory, the sovereignty and national independence of Ukraine are not called into question in any way, not even the slightest. And these behaviors, these antics of Russia, have been set forth as a concrete, ironclad position for its own terms. But setting conditions is one thing, but fulfilling them and going along with them is another. Let me say it again. I want the viewers to hear this. No matter what anyone says, no matter what decisions Trump and Putin might make, in the end, the final comprehensive document on agreements to suspend the ongoing war, to hold meaningful negotiations at all, and to reach any kind of lasting agreements, this absolutely must happen with Ukraine. The president of Ukraine expressed his position very clearly and unequivocally. He firmly stated that he would absolutely not allow any betrayal of the Ukrainian people, and that he would not go against the genuine will and sincere desire of the Ukrainian people. And the resilient Ukrainian people are absolutely not ready and do not accept the fundamental idea that they could ever give up even a single precious part of their sovereign territory. And therefore, based on all this, I think negotiations might be possible. I understand, and many experts insist on this, he's in a hurry. This year, he is trying to get the Nobel Peace Prize, and candidates already have to submit their applications. He needs to create at least a preliminary position in order to prepare and start submitting these documents. That's why Trump is behaving this way. So Trump's behavior is understandable. Russia's behavior is also understandable, but they also need to understand Ukraine's behavior and Ukraine's mood. And that's why I expect that everything they are planning, when I say both the American and Russian sides, won't go as smoothly as they think, because both Ukraine and a united Europe are against all of this, since Ukraine is also Europe, as are the European countries, his allies, does not support the initiatives of the United States of America in the form they have already announced. And that's why not everything has been said about these events yet. We will see a lot more to come. And I am convinced that Ukraine will not lose in all of this. It will not lose. If, for example, the military action is stopped along the line of contact, it's not a big deal. For Ukraine, that's not bad either, but no one gives any guarantees, and no document will state that this is not territory occupied by Russia. No matter what negotiations take place, the territory that Russia has occupied today will remain occupied territory. In other words, this territory will definitely be returned to Ukraine.
Ruslan Mukhamadovic, to wrap up, I'll ask you the last question for today. The Italian star of the 80s, Albano, said that a concert for peace will be held in Moscow. Singer Albano reported that he received a message from an impresario in Russia who has organized his performances for Putin 4 times, according to ANSA. Albano stated that in his professional relationship with the impresario, he has never made any mistakes. The peace concert will take place on Red Square in Moscow. This is wonderful news, he told ANSA. Wonderful news about a peace concert from a bloody dictator who bombs peaceful cities. Well, I guess by the age of 81, Albano has reached that stage in life and his mind and conscience got lost somewhere along the way. What do you think, Ruslan Mukhamadovic?
Well, Albano, and there are others too, including those Russians, those shameless supporters of the dictator, the bloody killer Putin, all they care about is money. Yes, about these kinds of initiatives. I've heard about them too, and I think by now the whole world knows about it. Russia doesn't always rush, but Russians do. They immediately share whatever they hear or receive. After all, there was also another piece of news here. Something else became known. It turns out that Trump, not just once or twice, but several times, has spoken. He's actually been in contact with Putin. He's had quite a few different negotiations, let's say, and phone conversations. So they must have already established some kind of pattern of behavior in these conversations. And I think based on all this, Russia, the Russian leadership, Putin, they believe they've already taken control of both Trump's mind and his behavior. I believe that's far from the truth. And in Russia, by the way, they've sensed this as well. After all, they made demands of the American side. Suddenly, Vance announced that Americans might appear on Ukrainian territory. As soon as their conversations became public, it turned out it was just a private chat between them. And what exactly they discussed there, we can only speculate. Putin was pouring all this praise into Trump's ears. He ran to him like a little dog to its master. Trump liked it, and this idyll between them only ended with the first, let's say, news about what they had discussed publicly. That was when a cold shower hit, because what Trump was saying wasn't accepted within America itself, and Europe completely expressed its position. I'll say it again, there were various statements, but the speech by Germany's defense minister really showed that Europe, let's say, does not intend to be America's errand boy. And that's why I think, Dasha, whatever expectations Russia may have had here, I want to remind our respected viewers that Russia actually marched on Kiev in parade uniforms, in their suitcases. They were planning to hold a rally on Krещатик, a peace march or whatever it was, or a ceremonial parade on Krещатик with their orders and medals. And that was 3 years ago, almost 3 years ago. So they can make all sorts of plans involving Italians, French, or even inviting singers from Africa to join them. But let's put it this way, Ukraine does not agree with such an agenda. Europe does not agree either. And that's why I think this is not meant to happen, and it will remain just a plan. I'm convinced.
Dear audience, as always, please like this video, subscribe to my YouTube channel, and hit the bell so you can be the first to watch my videos. In the comments, let us know where you're watching from and write a few kind words in support of Ukraine. President of the Assembly of the Peoples of the Caucasus, Ruslan Mukhamaedovich Kutayev, as usual, several times a week on my YouTube channel. Ruslan Mukhamaedovich, thank you, and I hope to see you again.
All the best, Dasha. All the best to you and to our respected Ukrainian viewers. We will definitely win. There isn't even the slightest doubt about it. So stay just the way you are. We will win, and there is no doubt about it. All the best, all the very best.